Over the past 3 years, I've had the opportunity to interview some amazing guests. Today, I'll interview my favorite. Coming up next on Carolina People.
And attaining some national prominence. North Carolina Central was also doing well and growing. Durham High School, which I attended, was, I think, the top high school in North Carolina at that time.
You're kidding.
You know, we have these state exams, and students at Durham High would frequently be number one in the state.
Is that right?
As a matter of fact, I can recall some instances where a student at Durham High would win 2 or 3 state contests.
You know that person, yeah.
As a matter of fact, I do.
Yeah, that's right.
But the schools were good. We also had a basketball team at Durham High. I think it won 85 straight games.
Oh, come on.
They were really the best in the country. You know, it was really a great place to be.
Huh.
So I loved Durham. Then I was away. I was away at school, in the military, and elsewhere. But I've always loved it. It's a great place. I urge any of your viewers to come visit us in Durham.
Our viewers in the PD are here on the Strand or up in southeastern North Carolina. Folks in Robinson and Scotland County have a pretty easy shot up 95 over to 40 and straight into Durham that way. Very
accessible. One interesting thing about Durham is that, according to us in North Carolina, the Civil War ended right outside Durham at a place called the Bennett Place.
Is that right?
Now, the Virginians say it ended at Appomattox.
Mm-hmm.
I think people in Texas say it ended at some later time. But as we view it, along about April 26th, I think it was, back in 1865, Sherman and Johnson got together, the Southern forces surrendered, and that was really the end of the Civil War. So that's another historic spot.
That's a big contention. I'm sure Durham and Appomattox are fighting for on a regular basis. Yeah.
Yeah, the Visitors Bureaus.
That's right, the Visitors Bureaus for sure. You know, I'm sure a lot of folks wondered, Ed, growing up in Durham, if you became a smoker yourself.
No.
Why not?
I guess I had too much cigarette smoke. That
you grew up around too much smoke,
yeah,
sure.
I didn't worry upon it. I don't know why, but I think I've smoked about 20 cigarettes in my life.
Is that right? Even growing up in Durham, North Carolina. Of course, so many folks still associate it with tobacco, even though tobacco has been on the wane in that area for quite a while. Of course, it's home of the famous movie, or of course is well known for that, Bull Durham. Another popular.
Of course, that is a baseball movie.
That's right, a baseball movie. And of course, the Durham Bulls, which are the kind of the parent team to the Myrtle Beach Pelicans. Little similar tie there, which is exciting, bringing these two cities together.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting. That was in the old Durham Athletic Park.
Right.
And now we've got a beautiful new park. And once again, I invite your viewers to come up and see the Durham Bulls.
That's a great...
Particularly because of the connection with the Pelicans.
Sure, of course, absolutely. This is a single A team down here, and of course that's now a triple A team,
that's right,
a feeder to the Florida Marlins, I think.
Yeah, I think they've done very well too.
Now, have you worked in some words of wisdom for your 2 sons and your daughter-in-law who will be attending law school later this month? Have you given them some pointers of things to look forward to?
Well, I really haven't. I've told them it should be very inspiring for them to go to the school at UNC because the law library there is named for their grandmother.
Right.
And there's a big portrait of her. And whenever they go in and out of the library, their grandmother's going to be looking at them.
Know whether they're studying or not.
That's
yeah.
right. So they better do pretty well. But I haven't really tried to tell them much. I think they've got some great faculty people there.
Right.
They'll have a chance to mingle with a couple of hundred more students as 1Ls.
Sure.
And I think they'll find it very enjoyable and very exciting.
And of course, your other daughter-in-law, I understand, is going to be doing something exciting here in the fall, helping out with the Ruth Faison Shaw project.
Oh yeah, That's something that's rather unique. I doubt if any of your viewers would have any idea who Ruth Faison Shaw is.
Please fill them in.
Well, she was the originator of finger painting.
I thought my daughter was. Yeah. I mean, no, I can't imagine the finger painting. I mean, what do you mean the originator of finger painting? That's been going on forever.
Well, the Romans had it, and then it sort of dropped off the board for about 2,000 years. And this gal from the rural area of North Carolina, down in Duplin County, I believe, went to Italy as a teacher. And some other, she got interested in the idea of finger painting, how the Romans did it. She developed a technique for finger painting, and was quite a celebrity back in the 40s and 50s. She worked with psychiatrists because finger painting can be good in connection with diagnosis or treatment for the young, the old. It's a lot of fun to finger paint. People like me who are too clumsy to use a brush, a canvas.
You'd be very popular at finger painting.
Yeah, absolutely. You can just take your hands and do things. And so, and I'd had contact with Ruth when I was a kid. And so now I'm working on the idea of trying to put together a foundation with the assistance of some other people who, like myself, either knew her or related to her. I'm slightly related to her. My mother was very close to her. And we're trying to put together a foundation to sort of commemorate finger painting and facilitate its use for therapy and for diagnosis, just for having fun. And my daughter-in-law is hopefully going to be working as executive director for that foundation when we get it started.
I understand you've gotten some interest from somebody from the Keenan Foundation, possibly interested, as well as the gentleman from the West Coast who called when I was home not long ago.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who are interested. This is one of the most remarkable people I know of at her, this Ruth Faison Shaw. And there are about 500 or 600 of her finger paintings in the Chapel Hill Museum. The last part of her life was there in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And the irony is that, as I understand it, the North Carolina Museum of Art did not view this as art. They never were interested in exhibiting these paintings. And given what I've seen that's been termed art, it's a little hard for me to understand that position. But all of these paintings were given by her to the University of North Carolina health system. She had worked with a psychiatrist there.
Right, sure.
And they were molding in boxes down in a basement somewhere and about to deteriorate. And the head of the Chapel Hill Museum at that time made efforts to get hold of them and try to arrange to exhibit them. So I viewed it sort of as a mission to try to preserve these paintings, preserve this handiwork, and to sort of spread the word about finger painting. And there's a guy who's a very active finger painter named Brian Carey, and he's sort of trying to carry on what Ruth Faison Shaw did.
That's exciting, Dad. You know, not that we're trying to promote your law business, but it's a great time to get your phone number out at your law office in Durham. If any of our viewers are interested in finger painting, it's a great opportunity for them to give you a call so that you could help get them involved in kicking off the foundation and making the Ruth Faison Shaw project even more exciting. Would it be okay to give out your law office number?
Oh, sure. Which is 919-682-5691.
Okay.
And if you don't remember the number, call my son, Greg Everett, the gentleman who's interviewing me right now.
Call Fox 43, of course, and get in touch with me. But more importantly, for any viewers interested, they could try your law office. Sure. Francie and the other folks there would know exactly Ruth Faison Shaw. They'd know that interest there. 919-682-5691.
You know, I really know nothing about art, but as a young person, I was so impressed by this wonderful person, Ruth Faison Shaw, who had this tremendous talent, the way she could communicate, the way she could paint something with her hands in 5 minutes that was, to me, as good as a lot of artists whose work is in museums. I've seen people have a lot of fun with it. The psychiatrists tell me that it's valuable for diagnosis, that it can be valuable for therapy. So I feel there's a mission to be performed.
Absolutely. That's a great mission to have. Speaking of mission, you think back to, albeit a lot of folks may not think of it as a mission, but going into the teaching of law, the practice of law, as well as the serving as a judge for many years. When we talk about the legal profession, you really covered all sides of that.
Well, in a way I have. I've been a student, of course.
Right.
That was a long time ago. I went to a wonderful law school, although I hadn't really planned to go to law school. And I was about to graduate from college and didn't know what I was going to do. And a friend of mine who had been in the armed services, he was getting ready to apply to the Harvard Law School. I went by there with him. He applied. I went ahead and did the same thing. And then all of a sudden there I was in law school. I knew that my mother and dad would be willing to hire me.
Aha.
I mean, they were both lawyers.
So you could have been terrible in law school and still gotten a job.
Yeah, that's right. Fortunately, I did okay. I was on the law review. And my dad knew the university counsel for Duke University. And they had a last-minute vacancy, needed somebody, and he talked to my father and said, "Your son's coming back to Durham, isn't he?" And my dad said he hoped so. They said, "Well, maybe there's an opportunity for him to teach." And so the next thing I knew, I had been hired. I was 22 then, so
22.
I think I may have established a record as an assistant professor at Duke. I don't think there were many 22-year-olds.
And you're not talking about an undergraduate professor. You're talking about a law school professor.
I was a law school professor. We didn't have many women students. We had a few. So I didn't have the problem of trying to get dates with my students.
That's right. Our director was asking about earlier this morning about that.
But I had an interesting time. I had a cousin who was a student of mine, and I remember the family said, "You got to really work hard on the course you're taking with Cousin Robinson because you don't want to disgrace the family." And he did okay. But I found teaching to be very exciting. But all my colleagues were much older than I. Mm-hmm. Most of my students were older than I. Most of them were veterans of World War II, and I just barely missed it. It hadn't been called active duty. I was in the reserve. So, it was funny in a way. It was sort of a relief when I was called active duty as a judge advocate. Mm-hmm. And then I got a chance to see the world from the standpoint of a military lawyer and prosecuted and defended courts martial. And then, pretty much by happenstance, I got a position working on the staff of what was then the Court of Military Appeals in Washington, D.C. And I delayed coming back to Durham for a couple of years while I was up there. Then came back to Durham, practiced a little bit, and then began teaching again. And I guess Duke made a special concession for me in that they let me practice some with my parents and at the same time do teaching. And so I was able to be in the classroom and also be in courtrooms. And
so is that not the case, not to cut you off, but are most law professors essentially forced to just teach law, or do they have the opportunity to teach and practice as well?
I think there are varying policies in that regard, and particularly the extent to which practice is admitted. I was interested in noticing the other day that one of my former students, Kenneth Starr, and I'm sure you've heard that name.
Ken Starr,
Ken Starr is the dean of the Pepperdine Law School.
Right.
But he also is of counsel to one of the major law firms, I believe, based in Los Angeles. So he's able to do two things.
Sure.
Many professors act of counsel to firms or of counsel in a particular case where they have expertise. But
we think back to your, not to cut you off, but we think back to another former student of yours, Jefferson Powell, who argued against you He was obviously practicing law. Am I correct on that?
No, he'd never been a former student of that.
Oh, I thought he was a Duke law grad, but another professor, of course, who was arguing against you in the U.S. Supreme Court back in 1993 or 6.
I think it was 93, and I think that was the first time in the history of the Supreme Court that there have been two members of the same faculty who argued against each other.
That's right. In the same case, two members of the same law faculty, Duke Law School, were arguing against each other in that, as you say, one of 75, one of 80 cases heard each year.
Well, at that time, they were probably hearing about 130 or something like that.
Okay, so again, it's been
hearing more cases
dropping every year. And then Walter Dellinger later, was he against you as well, another Duke Law faculty member?
He was.
Sounds like a lot of Duke Law folks, and that even I think the former dean of the North Carolina Central Law School, Julius Chambers, was also on the opposing side.
Right. I don't remember whether he was the dean at that time.
Or the chancellor of the university, possibly?
Very possibly.
Okay, forgive me.
That's some distinguished people on the other side.
Arguing against you, Dad. That's kind of scary.
I'm amazed we won any of them.
Yeah, that's right. Now, and speaking of that, you won 2 of those 4, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's ironic. We won the 2 that we appealed where we had lost at the trial level, and we lost the 2 where we had won at the trial level and the other side appealed.
Is that right?
But it was interesting. We basically established the principle that you cannot create redistricts, congressional districts or legislative districts on the basis of race. You cannot just say, well, we're grouping all of one race in a particular district. And
really pursuing an idea of pursuing the goal of a colorblind society.
That was the objective, and I still believe it was the right objective. And at least in theory, the court has approved that. The Supreme
Absolutely.
Court.
The majority of the Supreme Court as much as possible.
That's right.
You know, when you think through the steps about early instances in the practice of law, and you mentioned becoming a judge advocate, of course, lots of folks know the acronym JAG, because of a popular show on CBS. They don't necessarily understand exactly what it means to be a judge advocate general. What are some of the differences between being a judge advocate general or an attorney in the military and an attorney in the civilian world?
Well, I hate to say, you got something a little bit confused.
Okay, I'm happy to stand corrected, yeah.
Okay. You can be a judge advocate. I mean, like maybe 1,000 judge advocates in each of the major services.
Okay.
On the other hand, the judge advocate general is the guy that runs the show for all the lawyers.
Okay, so
there's only one of them.
There's only one judge advocate general in each branch?
Yeah, you've got one for the Army, for the Navy, for the Air Force, now for the Coast Guard. There's not one for the Marines as such. The TJAG that's the term. TJAG for the Navy also encompasses the Marine Corps.
Okay.
But the judge advocate has a very exciting career. It's not quite as exciting as
the show,
the one on JAG, but it's very exciting, and you get to prosecute and defend cases. After a while, you get a chance to be a military judge. You can render legal assistance. You know, service members and the dependents have a lot of legal problems they need help on. In fact, for many years, I've been the chair of the LAMP committee, as we call it, for the North Carolina Bar, the Committee on Legal Assistance to Military Personnel. And we try to get lawyers in the outside community to help judge advocates in, you know, assisting military personnel with their various matters, leases, wills, purchase of costs, whatever it may be that generates a legal issue. So you've got that. You've got claims against the government. Nowadays, you've got all sorts of sophisticated issues involving interpretation of treaties, going to Iraq and being involved in so-called operational law, being aware of restrictions on what military personnel can do in battling terrorists, things of that sort. Great variety.
Sure.
It's ironic. Many, many years ago, after I worked at the Court of Military Appeals, and had seen these interesting cases that we were getting, I had the idea of a TV series that would deal with military lawyers. And a friend of mine worked at CBS, and I gave him that idea, and I had a young lady who was trying to get the material together for the series. Unfortunately, she decided to marry somebody and was no longer available, and I didn't follow through. So
now this was well before JAG launched.
oh, this is in the 1950s, I think, way back. If I'd been able to pursue that idea, I might have been a multimillionaire by now.
You'd be relaxing down here, Dad, as opposed to still working. That's right.
And by the way, one of the cases that resulted in a movie, A Few Good Men, came to our court, the Court of Military Appeals, while I was chief judge there. We didn't review it, but I think we denied review, but at least the factual situation involved there was the basis for the play and later the movie.
That's great. Well, we want to talk about that more, as well as the founding of the Center on Law, Ethics, and National Security, and some other exciting things dealing with the legal profession. We've run out of time. Can you come back and be with us tomorrow morning?
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to it,
okay.
Greg.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dad. Stay tuned to more Carolina People with Robinson, Oscar Everett, coming up next. We focused a little bit on his life related to military justice, growing up in Durham, attending law school, practicing law. There's a lot more to Robinson Everett than we've touched on. Come back tomorrow for part 2 of the Honorable Robinson Oscar Everett.